How's it going, everybody? I'm doing my best to try to stay more consistent on YouTube posts and things like that now that I'm the pressure to focus on a CCIE is technically behind me, but not really. I'm still actively pursuing IEs. I'd like to fill above my head with plaques. I do have my 10-year coming up here soon, so I'm eagerly waiting that one. But there was a question posted on the video I put out yesterday about taking the security lab exam and things like that, and the question was, what do you use for IP management when you have such a big lab? And to be honest and a little ashamed, I actually don't have any IP management that I use other than doing a quick ping sweep. Normally, in my ESXi host, which is at Cisco UCSC 240, running ESXi 8, I normally, whenever the device itself gets an IP address, if I don't remember what it is, I can just click on it and it'll tell me what it is. So there's that piece, and if I need to dig in, I know how to look things up, stuff like that. But normally I don't, because a lot of what I can do is now inside of Eve. Most of what I do is inside of Eve, until it can't be. I know eventually I will earn the CCIEs that I want, get my CCDE, I'll have the plaques above my head that I want, things like that, and then the Cisco certification game that I'm playing right now, and honestly losing just a little bit because I failed. Eventually that I will check all the boxes, I will have all the championships, if you will, that I want, and then the drive for Cisco certifications will kind of die off. I won't be able to, without hardware, it's going to be really hard to do data center. Even though I would like to get every CCIE there is, it's just it's not feasible for data center unless you have an actual ACI lab. Collaboration, I don't see a lot of customers staying with Cisco collaboration, like the traditional CUCM, stuff like that. I'm actually, quite a few of the customers that I support today are moving away from it. They're going to a cloud-based solution, with some sort of hosted voice, stuff like that. So I don't see a lot of customers staying on Cisco collaboration platforms. So to me, why would I waste my so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Why would I waste my time learning the technologies, the architectures, and how to implement these solutions if the customers I'm supporting aren't going to be staying on them, right? At the same point in time, on the other side of that, I should learn it anyway, just so that when there's a voice conversation happening, I know what's being talked about. Because oftentimes that is like one of the few platforms that I don't know much about, because I just have never been interested in learning voice. So there's that. So it's a double-edged sword. Wireless, that could be a reality, because Network Dojo, who is ran by Jeff Rensink, he's a former IP Expert instructor. Once IP Expert went out of business, he started Network Dojo, and he has packages available. I went out and I bought the CCNP wireless one, and I think it was like $250 or something like that. So I bought that to help me when I was starting my CCDE prep for the wireless stuff, and so the content is really good. Jeff is really good at describing wireless, and that's how I was able to get up to speed with it as quickly as I was. But at some point in the future, I probably will go down the wireless track, because wireless will never go away. There's always going to be customers needing some sort of wireless infrastructure, whether it is Cisco, Meraki, Aruba, Juniper, who else is out there? I mean, Fortinet has their own solution. There's a lot of different, who's another one? Ruckus. There's a lot of wireless vendors out there. I mean, just about any networking vendor has a wireless solution. So I'm more interested not necessarily in getting the CCIE per se. That would be nice to have, right? Having a wireless IE wouldn't hurt to have. But I'm more interested in understanding how the technology works and not so much how to implement it. Being able to have a conversation about the technology, the architecture the customer is looking to use, so on and so forth. That to me is more valuable, way more valuable, especially in my current role. I'm 100% pre-sales. I don't actually deploy anything. So for me, to keep my skills sharp on the pre-sale side, what I have been spending my time and effort doing is spending my time on the technical side doing implementation stuff so that I can stay relevant on configuring things and setting stuff up and stuff like that. And going after CCIEs, it's a long, slow, consistent process, and I enjoy the journey of going for that and learning how to make things work, and there's stuff like that. Ironically, sometimes when you guys will be watching content of mine where I'm not on camera, but you can see my screen, whenever I have an adjacency form, you won't see it, but I'll be expecting a pairing to happen, whether it's BGP, IGP, stuff like that. And behind the off camera, I'll pause, or the video still will record, but I'll take my hands off my keyboard and mouse, and I will do this when I expect it to come up. When it doesn't, I'm like, okay, why? Because I'm counting down in my head. Okay, it should have come up by now, and then within usually a couple of seconds, if it hasn't already come up, it does come up. So, and that type of stuff is, I enjoy doing that. I would definitely consider it one of my hobbies. So it's kind of a weird hobby to have, but if you turn something you like doing, if you have an interest and you turn it into a hobby where you do it on a regular basis, that to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? That's how you get good at what you're doing. So after I got back from the lab exam, I did some research figuring out what things would look like and what the best way to approach reviewing the documentation. So I ended up having to humble myself. Not that I don't consider myself to be a humble person, but it's one of those things where you just have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, where did I go wrong? Simple as that. And so I have to take responsibility and be accountable for what happened. I failed the exam because I didn't study enough material long enough, and that's the reason why I failed. Simple as that. There's really no sugarcoating it. So because I know I need a lot more time on security, I was just like, well, why not go ahead and just focus my time and effort on, I can focus my time and effort on something else. And I've always wanted to get the service provider CCIE, and so I was like, I've got a CCNP in service provider, and in 2019 I sat for the service provider version 4 lab exam. I failed that, and shortly thereafter, I think it was 6 months later, and sometime in early 2020, there was a switch, and they switched to version 5, and the way that the webinar went, I was just like, yeah, this isn't going to be worth my time or effort to go after, because I didn't do anything service provider, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. So I started going down the VMware path, really hardcore. I ended up getting a few VCPs. I got my VCIX and NSX. So my goal was to do that, and then during that period of time, I ended up working for a consulting firm doing a lot of data center work. So I started going down the data center path, and NSX is a data center technology, so is VMware. So that took me into a different path, and the service provider stuff went by the wayside. Security went by the wayside. I didn't touch SP technologies. I didn't touch firewalls. The company I worked for, they had you siloed, right? I would flip between enterprise and data center. because that was my area of expertise, and that's where they told me that's where I made them the most money, so that's where they were going to stick me, because I was useful and valuable in that area. So I ended up doing a lot of VXLAN, and I got really, really good at VXLAN. But when you're doing it every day, you're going to get good at it. There's really no, you really can't argue against it. So long story short, when I came to work for my current employer, and I no longer had to worry about doing deployments or setting up labs and trying to mock up customer environments that are rather complex and stuff like that. And I had a couple dedicated accounts where we went through and I had to like build out entire environments inside of Eve. Dude, that's where the bare metal installs were born from, because I couldn't replicate their environments inside of an Eve virtual machine in ESXi. So that was the pivot from virtual machines to direct installs. And I've never looked back. I've always done a direct install, a bare metal install of Eve. And, excuse me. So over time, and now that I've worked in pre-sales, and the cool part is that need to do the configurations and things like that to meet customer goals, that all went away. So, and I don't ever see myself going back to a delivery or deployment engineer, right? I like pre-sales. I like the flexibility it gives me. So, but it also gives me free time to go study things that I actually want to go study, because before, I had 4, 5 servers running in my basement, and each one had a dedicated customer attached to them. So if I wanted to play around with a different technology, I had to spin it up inside of Eve as a virtual machine. And when you're already putting in 10, 11, 12-hour days, from 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're working all day. Now, this is before I came to work to where I'm at now. You're working all day, and then you're having to... sometimes you would get downtime, but I was busy enough with customer meetings throughout the day to where I really didn't get any downtime. And then you'd have a little bit of a break from 5 or 6 o'clock at night until 8, 9 o'clock at night, when a change window would kick off. And so I'd be on change windows from 8 o'clock at night till, some of them were only an hour, some were 4, 5, 6, 8 hours, depending on the day. And so it moved from working a 40-hour work week to working 60, 70, 80 hours. And because of the fact that you never leave the house, I work from home 95% of the time unless I needed to be somewhere. You're putting in that many hours, and I'm in front of the computer, right? I have my work laptop to my right set up where I could access customers' environments. I have this computer that I'm recording on. I had the ability to labbing stuff up. I'd spend a lot of time in Eve trying to figure out how to make things work, and reading documentation, debugging things, setting stuff up, making sure I can get it operational, pulling the configs out, and then I would massage them to meet the customer's environments. So there was always a level of learning that was needed. So I really never had the time to learn anything new. So I wanted to go and get other certs, and I had a VMware environment that I had stood up because I did a lot of NSX. So because of that, I ended up having to spend a lot of time diving into those technologies and things like that. And I always wanted to write a book on it. I always wanted to record a video series around it, and release this content. Somebody that actually has real world experience working on these platforms, deploying them for customers and troubleshooting scenarios and things like that. I always wanted to take the knowledge and put it into something that somebody else might be able to use and not have to fumble around like I did. But I just never had the time. By the time you're done working 60, 70, 80 hours, You are, even though I enjoy doing the work and stuff like that, you get to a certain point where you just, it becomes work and you disconnect from it and you need a break. And so there were, and I was consistently, I wouldn't say under pressure per se, but there was a consistent amount of work. Like I never had downtime. I might have a week here or a week there, and we're talking over the course of, I would usually go, the development folks would call it a sprint, right? I would have little sprints of 4 to 6 weeks where I might have 1 week where I'd have like a Tuesday and a Thursday where I'd only have like 4 meetings instead of 6 or 7, and that gave me a couple of hours to where I could not be on my computer or my work laptop, and I could be over here. And a lot of times I wouldn't be labbing anything up. I would sit and watch YouTube just to disconnect, give myself some sort of a mental break. But the expectation was, and I think at my peak, I had 4 dedicated accounts, 4 EVE NG deployments, all with the community version on Cisco servers, Cisco and Dell servers. And then I had 2 or 3 EVMs running with other things that I was testing out that didn't require a dedicated system. And I wasn't needing to relearn anything, but I started to pick up speed on certain things because I kept on doing them over and over and over again. You do enough VXLAN deployments both manually and through Nexus Dashboard, you get comfortable doing it. And so I was doing those routinely on a regular basis. So the cool part was I got really good at it. The bad part about it is you start to get to a point where you're getting burnt out, where you're working a lot and you don't really get the downtime because the company realizes that they can make a lot of money. And I was getting through the work very, very quickly. So they would set up a fixed bid project, it'd sell it for X amount of thousands of dollars, and then I would come in and I would knock it out really quick because that was, that's all I did. And a lot of times I would leave customers in a migration state. So I would get them to where they were okay, and then they could just start swinging cables whenever they felt comfortable doing it. And I would leave them with like scripts, like here's what you need to run in order to do this, here's what you need to run to do that, and so that I would have it all figured out and stuff like that. So now that I don't have to do that anymore, I have time to do other stuff. And for it's only been the past, I'd say, 9 months, maybe just over, maybe a year. Yeah, because when I found out I was going to go to Cisco Live last year, I knew I was going to need to recertify my IE. So I started focusing on the DE written, and then at Live I passed it. And so I decided to, the DE scares me a little bit because it's not an implementation exam, and design can be very subjective. So knowing that, I've always put it off, the practical exam, I've always put it off because I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough in those areas to be able to sit for the exam. And I don't want to waste my time sitting for an exam just to fail it. So the intention was go through the security and service provider tracks and as deep as I think I need to. And so as I was going through, I was like, well, by going through INE, K-bits, Orhan, Ergun, and there's other content that I've come across in that along the way, and I'm like, I could do this. And so security CCIE doesn't seem that hard, and well, clearly I underestimated that, but I was able to get a lot of things working. Right, I could use AnyConnect remote access VPN through AnyConnect or SSL VPN through either SSL or IPE version 2. I could get them all working. I could authenticate via AD. I could apply group policies and filter lists, and I could get down in the minutia and make all that work. So thinking to myself, okay, I can, I could totally knock a CCIE out. I got my NP in security at the beginning of the year. But part of the process was, it was like, okay, I don't know what else to study, so I'm going to go sit for the exam and find out. And, well, as I mentioned in my previous video, that I realized very quickly what I didn't know. And so, but that's the whole point. So I was actually in the lab exam, sitting there thinking to myself, maybe service provider would have been a better choice to go after. And so, I've got a CCNP in service provider. I've had that for a long time. And I think I got that in 2016, I think. And then I did INE's CCNA and CCNP service provider content. And that went really well. And, but after I did that, there were, I didn't see where I fit at INE. And it just, and they weren't very accommodating to where I was at. They wanted, the people that I talked to wanted me to go get my service provider CCIE and then go record content for that so that Brian McGann didn't have to. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm qualified for that because at the time I was still learning the track and I didn't see myself qualified to deliver that training. So I did spend quite a bit of time in service provider trying to get my IE in it, but for one, I'd always get pulled in a different direction with work and I'd have to go learn something, and so that would pull time away from what I wanted to do. And so eventually I told them, I was like, listen, I don't have the bandwidth to give to meet the deadlines you want to put in. And so other instructors were contracted, I guess, or assigned the work that they were going to give me to do service provider and other content that they wanted me to go do. And so I eventually disconnected myself from INE and stopped working with them. But it's just one of those things where sitting in a lab exam, you realize how much more you need to know. And not to say that I couldn't have passed if I would have really tried, but it was a recon attempt, and I did that going in. I didn't expect myself to pass. So, but I know I need a lot more time. So some folks might say, well, why don't you keep your foot on the gas and spend the extra 6 months or whatever it is to go level yourself up so you can go take it. And that's a valid point, but at the same point in time, I'm just like, I think it would be easier to get service provider because I've already I had an NP in it a long time ago. There's really not a lot that I would have to go learn. The barrier to entry is easier, to be honest. So, which brings me to the point, what I've got on your screen is I've actually went out and I bought the CCNP Service Provider Core Official Certification Guide, and I've been reading through the architecture section. So my goal, my new goal right now, and for the foreseeable future, and before I go any further, I am looking to take the CCDE practical at Cisco Live because I'll be there, and they have the ability to take it on that Saturday. So I figured, you know what, why not just take a crack at it, see what happens, see what it looks like, because I think I know what it looks like, but I haven't actually sat for the DE yet. So I'm working on getting that scheduled. So I've got we're getting work to pay for it. So going through that process right now. And then my goal is over the next couple of months, between reading up on security stuff and some security, mostly service provider. I'm working my way through the core exam. So what I want to do is I'm working on going through the material to refresh my memory and to go through some things that I haven't gone through in a long time. So I'm reading through the architecture pieces right now. Actually, the last thing I stopped on was routed optical network. So my goal is to record a YouTube version of CCNP Service Provider that is going to be, I'm not going to bulletize it, like the videos won't be broken down like the exam blueprint is. It'll be more focused on here's architecture, and I'll go through architecture, the different things that need to be broken down, and then once those things are done, I'm going to be shuffling this around a little bit. So if you go through the entire body of content, I'm planning on doing the core exam, and then I'm also going to be doing the route exam. So there's, I'm not taking these exams because I've already got an NP and service provider. I don't need to re-up anything. But I'll be taking the bullet points on the exam topics, and I'll be creating content around them. So that's the goal. And what I'm going to be doing with the exam topics, where anytime you see it's describe or stuff like that, it's going to be just that, but I'm going to put it in a body or a block of work, block of videos. So I'm not going to talk about QoS architecture in the beginning of a series and then 50 videos later actually implement QoS. I'm going to be talking about it, describing the capability, and talking about implementing and actually doing the work as we're going through that section. So I'll be organizing them by category, not based off of the exam section. So hopefully that will tie in tighter, because then not only will you understand the architecture of that particular capability or technology, but then I'm going to immediately start diving into implementing the capability. So you'll see before and after and stuff like that. So that's my goal. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm spending the time on the topics that I don't know as well, and going through that, because that'll help me long term on the capabilities that I need. Take that information, taking notes on it, stuff like that, and then for like the networking, we'll talk about dynamic routing and how to get all that type of stuff set up, and doing a multi-address family deployment, so V4 and V6 at the same time. And the goal is to go through how all this stuff works, and then get into MPLS and segment routing, talk about how the configuration works behind all of the capabilities that you see here, and then talk about the services, layer 3 VPN, so on and so forth, and then go deploy the capabilities, and talk about how you would do XYZ with them. Same thing with automation and assurance. Talk about the capabilities, do some very, very basic configurations with them, and then that would be the core routing. And my goal is, like at the beginning of the title of the video, it would be CCNP SP core, and then so you would know roughly what it's talking about. But for example, here with IGP, right, it talks about implement ISIS and OSPF, but it also talks about implementing them again here. So it's troubleshooting, describe BGP scalability. So my goal is to have sections, so it'll be architecture that doesn't tie to a particular technology that I can actually implement on the CLI, and then talk about IGPs, BGP, segment routing, MPLS traffic engineering, multicast, and go through all these capabilities and their details. So by the time I get done with all this and then the VPN exam, and then the cloud exam is going to be a bit more challenging because it's more focused on cloud. But the big thing is there's some stuff in here, direct connections, like how you would do different capabilities and stuff like that. So it's going to be a little bit more advanced, stuff like that. So there's really, I don't remember there being anything on NSO. I might be incorrect about that. Let me scroll down here at the bottom. So yeah, NSO. So my goal is to get Network Services Orchestrator working on a Linux VM inside of Eve, and then get that fully operational, and then use that down the road towards the end, right? We'll dive into NSO and how you would do different things in an exam on a topology with NSO. Because at the end of the day, my goal is to cover all 4 exams in the content, and as I go through this, that will be my way of teeing myself up to take the Service Provider Lab exam. So that's my intention. So as we go through this process, there's going to be a lot that's going to get covered, and my plan is, as I'm going through it, I'm debating whether to write a workbook. I probably will write a workbook, and what I'll do is, because of the fact that I don't have any customers that I need to lab anything up for, I'm going to have 2 different Eve instances going. I'll have one that will be workbook development, so that I can get everything up and running, working, tested, and stuff like that, and have all the verifications and configuration ready to go. So it's just to copy all that out of the CLI into the book, and I'll have another instance of Eve going where I'll take what I just covered and I will lab it out with you guys in a video. So you'll have the workbook, which will be a known good configuration guide for service provider, but it'll also cover the implementation, right? The videos will be the technical deep dive, where I'll go into explaining how this stuff works and stuff like that. I don't really want to put the time and effort into a book of putting like paragraphs of technical detail. I could dictate it, but I would rather do that in a video where I can walk you guys through stuff, and if you're watching, you can then ask a question about the content. That's my goal, and I'm probably going to be doing that for the next few months. The goal here is, if I have downtime, I know summer is coming up, so my goal is do this. This is also going to help me with my DE prep, and then I'm also going to focus on, because my area of expertise is service provider, large scale networking. So I need to dive into service provider much more thoroughly, and it's going to be a technical refresh for me too. Even though I could configure layer 3 VPNs off the top of my head right now, I just did one the other day. My goal is to go through all of that and walk you through the individual capabilities and technologies on both iOS and XR, so that when it comes time to do the demonstrations and things like that, I'll be demoing what you're going to see in the workbook, and then I'll be explaining how the technology works and doing the debugs and doing the verifications and stuff like that, and trying to correlate to try to help you guys understand how this stuff works. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing for security once I get service provider out of the way. Once SP is done, I've got a second CCIE under my belt, hopefully a CCDE. Once I take the practical at live, I'm planning on taking in the service provider lab later in the summer. My wife and I were down in Dallas a couple weeks ago, the week of the 19th. That's actually when I sat for the security lab exam, and it was decent out. But everybody that I know that lives down there were like, it gets a lot hotter in the summer. So we're like, well, why don't we go take a trip down there for a few days, or take a week and go down to Dallas, and you can take the lab exam, take one of those days, take the lab, and then we can, enjoy the weather down there. And I'm like, sounds like a plan to me. So we're going to be taking a trip down to Dallas again towards later in the summer, right before my youngest son goes back to high school, and so that's what I'm going to be working on. And do I have a, let's see, it is April 4th today, so let me just scoot down here. So I would have April 4th, all of April, all of May, all of June, or most of June, all of July, and I would have probably the first week or so of August. Because so the thing that I want to make sure that I'm doing is I've got all of April, so that's 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, we'll say 17 weeks. 17 weeks to get myself ready for service provider, and that's 4 months. I think that's doable considering I'm not having to learn much from the ground up, and what the topologies are going to look like yet I have no idea. I'm still in learning mode on architecture, so that's my goal right now, is to knock out the architecture section, make sure that I understand how this stuff works, and so that when I get to the actual implementation of the capability, I know what it is to talk about, how it works, that type of stuff. So that's what the official certification guide's job is for me right now, is to help me understand how the technology works and things like that, and understand packet architectures and things like that. I'm already familiar with most of this stuff, but going through it again and reading up never hurts to refresh your memory, right? I'll always be the first person to tell you that I'm completely fine with not knowing something and going to learn it. So that's the whole purpose of life. So we're going to go through that. So it's going to be architecture in the beginning, then it'll be like IGP, then BGP, both MPLS and non-MPLS, and segment routing, because we need to understand how internet routing works. So we'll talk about how that comes into play, but we're also going to talk about how you integrate MPLS segment routing. So my goal is to try to keep the topology small and relatively easy to stand up. They're not going to be these massive topologies, at least in the learning section. I'm going to break it up where you'll have a learning section where it'll be going through all the technologies, like an advanced technologies class, right? You're going through the entire blueprint of the exam as thoroughly as I think we need to, and once that checkbox is checked and all those technologies are covered, then it would become more of a lab focus where we build out a larger topology and then we walk through, going through and configuring everything. Because then I already know how everything works. You guys know the content that's created in the workbook. The videos are recorded for all the technology learning sections, and then now we're dealing with implementing labs. That is my goal right now, until I pass the Service Provider Lab exam. And I'm going to continue hitting that until I get there. And I'm going to apply the exact same logic to security once I circle back to attack that. And that's going to do the exact same thing with it, right? My goal is to do that. And then if I dive into wireless or data center or collaboration, or I'm going to do the same thing for CCDE, I'll talk about how these things work, and if I need to lab things up to drive home to point or test out different design theories and stuff like that, I'll do that as well. And then once I've checked all the check boxes I have for Cisco, then I don't know if I'm going to go Juniper. Probably going to dive into some cloud, Azure, AWS. Those are the two big cloud providers that I see regularly used. Stuff like that. So I don't know where the road leads me once I'm done doing all the Cisco stuff that I want to do, but I don't know. The cool thing is I've yet to figure that out, and there's no wrong answer. So with that being said, that is everything I wanted to cover today in this video. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, feel free to drop that information in the comments below, and I'll catch all of you folks in the next one.